Live from Yubaba's bathhouse, this is Derailed Trains of Thought. Well, hello, and welcome to episode 48 of Derailed Trains of Thought. This is Timothy Deal.
This is Nick Hayden.
And we're coming to you really tired because they've been putting us to work like slaves.
Yeah, I have like calluses all over my hands.
I thought this place was supposed to be relaxing. The brochures didn't say anything about humans clause.
Exactly. We need to keep our mouth shut. Last time we said, hey, maybe we'll end up in a... And we did.
yeah, we have to be careful about that sort of thing.
So...
The podcast has a will of its own.
Yeah, it's like as I said before, like the Mouseketools.
Yes.
So...
I mean,
yeah, but it's not. I mean, it's a very interesting time here. I mean, there's lots of interesting spirits, radish-looking things, and
I don't sleep very well at night.
No, I had lots of dreams, bad dreams. But
I mean, there's certain ones that you just want to watch out for, like that weird guy with the white mask.
Oh, he's. There's something wrong with that guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust him any farther than I can throw him.
No, I don't think you throw him very far. Probably.
No, probably not. But welcome. We're risking our lives.
Taking a break from scrubbing and more cleaning.
Yeah, lots of cleaning. But anyway, welcome to episode 48.
Well, cleanliness next to godliness, so that's
good. I guess that makes sense when you're at a spirit. But yes, so if you've, this is episode 48, so if you've been doing a 2-day marathon, don't worry, hang in there, you're almost through.
Dun, dun, dun.
But thank you for listening in. Oh, go ahead.
That was 2 seasons of 24.
That's right. That's a pretty good track record. So how have you been, Nick, despite, before we got here? Apparently you brought your cell phone with you.
I don't think that's my cell phone. I have no idea who that is either.
Okay. Apparently one of the spirits brought their cell phone and they're getting prank calls or something.
Interesting. Won't be the first time, I guess. So yes, how's life?
Pretty good. Yeah.
We had a batch of sickness there in our family. Yeah. It's all better now.
There's some other stuff that actually I'll save my more personal updates for later in the show, I think. Yeah, so I think that'll probably be a better place for it.
So should we launch right in?
Yeah. Meanwhile, let's go into story school. Today's story school topic is beauty. We thought this might be a nice thing to bounce off of since our last episode was on gratuitous content. This would be kind of, okay, so that's some of the bad sort of things you don't necessarily want in your story, but what's the good stuff? Nick, what is the good stuff?
Bradbury. No, no. Well, when I was thinking about this topic, I thought, well, beauty is a very wide subject, so I thought I'd try to break it down. And I guess the first thing I thought of, there's, I guess, 2 different aspects of beauty, types of beauty. One is just that sort of things that all fit together. You know, beautiful prose, beautiful words, beautiful, you know, the symmetry in a painting, or the craftsmanship, you know, is a beautiful table. And I think there's a lot to that. There's the sense that we have honed our craft in such a way, whatever the craft it is, that it exudes a sense of beauty, of rightness, of completeness, of, you know, things all fit together properly, you know, which is kind of the opposite of gratuitousness in some ways, you know, which is kind of like, let's throw this in for no good reason, when beauty is like, everything has its part. And I think we can talk some about that if we want, but I think the more interesting beauty is something that's slightly above that, more of an emotional response to something you see, you read, you experience, and it might be because it's well put together, or maybe not. It's just like this not quite like an epiphany, but that sort of moment, that sort of like, it just strikes you and it sinks deeper down from it, you know, it goes through your mind and sinks down deeper into like the soul, the emotions, it lasts for some reason or other. And that's a sort of inexplicable, indefinable sense of beauty.
Okay.
So
those are 2, yeah, that's kind of your thumbprint for,
that's my thumbprint
for the whole discussion,
yes.
In a sense. All right, so let's dive into a little bit more first of the first one, the craft of it. Yeah. So what makes a beautiful piece of writing or a beautiful novel or story?
Okay, part of it is just that, you know, we throw around the Chekhov's gun, you know, if there's a gun on the thing, it should be shot. You know, the fact that everything plays its part, nothing's excessive or nothing's like, the pacing's all good. You know, just the sense that everything is as it should be. Yeah. I think that is one sense, and that can be, you know, your writing doesn't have to necessarily be like beautiful words. And I think then there's an extra sense of beauty in the. I remember Tolkien saying, I think it's in the essay on fairy stories, talking about that certain words, if you use them right, simple words have a lot of power to them. Things like grass and tree and a lot of times we just kind of throw those around. But when Tolkien uses them, you know, they have this whole world of meaning attached to them. And I think there's a sense in beauty is being able to pull out of words, at least for a story, pull out of words the meaning that's in them, as opposed to just slamming them together and doing kind of this cursory meaning of stuff. In some ways, closer to poetry. With poetry, you know, it's probably the most extreme sense of I'm going to get as much meaning out of 3 words as possible. There's a sense in story where you can do that, to obviously in a more narrative sense, in a more like I'm not just, you know, trying to create a picture or an image, but I'm trying to tell this story. But every word carries power.
Sure. And I imagine that's a big challenge because you want to go for like eloquent language. You know, you'd be very tempted to just use a lot of flowery words, and then sometimes that becomes kind of a caricature of itself.
You know, purple prose. You know, you ever seen those bad writing examples? You do that award every year with the beginning of novels that are just overblown and with the metaphors and stuff. I forget what that is called. It's, you know, it's kind of based on that. It was a dark and stormy night thing of Snoopy's.
It gets too
obfuscated.
Obfuscated. I was thinking that was the word.
I think so. Yeah, okay. I learned that word from X-Files.
But yes, too much like.
And I think, and it is and that sort of craft is there's a fine line. And sometimes it's an audience line, like. I mentioned, you can throw out half jokingly Bradbury earlier, but like Dandelion Wine, when I'm reading it, it's almost achingly nostalgic. Like it just makes me hurt. It's so like I wish life was, you know, it's like almost like the memories you wish you had. But simultaneously, I can see some people thinking that language is way too. He does tend to just kind of heap language on language, and it works for me. It might not work for everyone. Other people think the very sparse, cut back prose of Hemingway is very beautiful. The like, you know, there is a sense of poetry, I guess, in this that I'm using as few words as possible and as few emotions. It's just kind of a lecture I heard was like the iceberg effect. Like you see like 10% of the story. I just read a Hemingway story called The Killers, which is supposed to be great, and I don't get it. It's not my style at all. I guess I do admire more of in a kind of a cerebral way the fact that, hey, wow, he really like said, you know, he can tell a story with very few adjectives and
sort
stuff
of like
that.
a haiku of
yeah, exactly.
And I guess I wonder if there's something about the stoicism of Hemingway that kind of appeals to people. Like if you're a very stoic kind of person anyway, that might appear more beautiful to you.
And as I've been reading short stories lately, I really feel like the worldview of the writer affects a lot of not only the method of the writing, but also my reaction to it. You know, not that I'm like, oh, I don't believe with that, but inherently the stoicism of Hemingway doesn't affect me because I'm not a stoic person. You know, I don't be like, oh, this is how I view the world. I'm like, why are you viewing the world like that?
Yeah.
A little off from beauty, but I think that's why that sort of craft beauty, you have various versions that resound with people in different ways. And I figure in video it's probably kind of the same, people's choices.
I think you could say that. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, we can go into the visual medium here a little bit. Because, different people are going to fall in love with different kinds of movies. I mean, I can fall in love with the beauty, and I think a lot of people will recognize the beauty of, say, a Pixar movie. But then there's also some moments of beauty in black and white movies. I mean, and not just like artistic black and white. Black and white is often a choice. It doesn't just have to be old movies or even noir-ish movies.
Metropolis is quite a beautiful movie for.
Yes.
I mean, in its way, in a very old school sci-fi sort of way,
giving you a completely new kind of visual experience. And I think people would say the movies of Bergman or, a lot of the famous European black and white directors, they've got an element of beauty in that too.
Random thing. So it's like The Bicycle Thief, like the visual equivalent to Hemingway?
That's arguable. I'd say Hemingway is probably closer to, I got his name wrong the last time I mentioned him, so I'm not sure I'm going to say it now. But the guy who I talked about it a while back, Pickpocket, Robert, I think it's Bresson, but I might be saying that wrong. But anyway, he strips a lot of emotion out of his actors. He wanted them to act very emotionless, which for some stories I don't feel really worked. Like he did a Lancelot adaptation, and
That's really weird. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't personally, that doesn't work for me because Lancelot is supposed to be very Arthur's stories are supposed to be very extravagant or very otherworldly, and this emotionless thing that doesn't work. But I did feel, like I said before, I think Pickpocket did work because it was kind of about this very cynical person and a very, the mood matched the character is the way I felt. That's definitely an example where the craft works with it.
And I think there's a lot of those elements of craft that you need to perfect as much as possible, within your own voice and your your ability. But I think I remember back when I first started writing in a semi-serious manner, I had this idea called the polish and the spark or something like that. I don't remember what I called it exactly. And the polish was the craft. You want to make, but the whole point of that was to make it easier to see the spark in the work. And I think that's the other sort of beauty, and that's the beauty that probably people remember. The craft beauty many times is more of a cerebral beauty, more of a I admire that, or that's really that's really clever, or
in some sense, a lot of times that's why you can admire a movie without necessarily liking it.
Which has happened many times.
Yeah,
but the spark is more that moment, that glimpse of something other than that brings you outside yourself, that lifts you up. It's one of those things you just say, "Do you remember when we saw that?" The sort of things people feel when they see a beautiful sunset. They have to just stop whatever they're doing and look at it. It's arresting. I like to compare it somewhat to C.S. Lewis's idea of joy, that it is that desire for desire. I think that's how he phrases it. And I think that's the more, I'm not sure you can make that happen, but you can create circumstances where it's easier for it to happen.
Work towards
it, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of this indescribable thing that you manage to get a glimpse of.
And sometimes it's something that might be in a bad movie, bad book, but somehow it just works with your frame of mind or the age you're at, or just because it's tilted in a way that meets your soul.
Yeah.
So examples or comments on that?
Well, you mentioned earlier how we talked about stoicism and sometimes how it connects with your worldview and that sort of thing. And I know we've talked about this before. And I remember it kind of tied into truth. One of these things, one of the reasons why we find certain things beautiful is that there is an element of truth to them, and that usually resounds with something deep inside of us. And sometimes you get, again, in the Stoicism example, something that feels very true for someone else's worldview, but not necessarily your own.
Yeah, I do think beauty and truth are very closely linked. I think truth is always beautiful if it's presented in a beautiful... Well, I'm not saying that correctly.
I think there's a very fine line here.
Yes, there's a fine line. Let me rephrase my idea, which is, I think, at least for me as a writer, one goal is to know the truth and then to present it as beautifully as possible. Because to me, part of the possible role of a writer is to highlight good things, we like to talk about how things should be. When you have a King Arthur novel and it's all great, and then to bring back Lancelot, when Lancelot commits adultery, things go bad. So you're making bad things unbeautiful, as opposed to King Arthur is always, especially in the more old ones or the more romanticism, the style of romantics. King Arthur is usually a very beautiful figure, very beautiful character. In the sense of, he's heroic and noble and all this other stuff, that he's something you aspire to be.
Sure.
And then I think there's a lot of times where characters are beautiful in stories. Sam Gamgee is a beautiful character. Yeah. You'll do anything for Frodo. That is something that people remember. Many people, this is like, if I had to be a hobbit, I would be Sam Gamgee.
Because I want to be, he's a servant in a lot of things, and people recognize how humble he is and how he's sacrificing for Frodo. And
he carries Frodo on his back and gives him the food and more. And the whole scene in Mordor in that last section is just genius. Yeah. Because Frodo really can't do much at that point.
Well, yeah, and there's beauty in a very dark section of the story.
Yeah.
So,
like when Sam's there and they're both in the prison in Minas Morgul,
Morgul, yeah.
And Sam sees the star and sings that song. Oh man, good stuff.
Yes.
The eucatastrophe is generally a beautiful thing. Have we defined? Well, I'm sure we have at some point, but eucatastrophe is sort of where everything's going bad and then it turns good. And I think when you use that in a manner that resounds with, at least for me, truth and stuff, it's nice. It's good stuff.
Yes. It's where, whenever beauty and truth meet up like that, it's very good because truth can take on, or I should say, falsehood, lies can take on a beautiful form. Beauty can be deceiving, if it's used incorrectly. The Bible refers to Satan as that he masquerades as an angel of light.
And there's plenty of movies that make things that I wouldn't agree with seem like, oh, this is a great thing to do and happy and, good things happen from it.
Yeah. And stories have played too with that idea of evil being, kind of friendly. Mr. Morden, Babylon 5.
No, Mr. Morden is a great example of that.
The audience doesn't trust him at all. But for Londo, at first, he seems very appealing.
Yes.
And I'm sure there are other characters like that aren't coming to
I'm sure. So, how about name some beautiful moments, scenes, characters?
Well, when I was thinking about beautiful, I guess we're going more into the emotional side. Yeah.
Because we could talk about the craft all day, but
yeah. Well, I thought of a couple categories within that side of beauty, and one of those was visual beauty.
Yeah.
And that can be, that can range anywhere from landscapes. This is Middle Earth. This is where Tolkien thrives in
he does
the beautiful setting.
Lothlorien cannot come across in visuals, I don't think, as well as it does in that book.
Probably not, no.
They try very well, but there's just a way the words bring about this sort of angelic, and the way light seems to work in the words that is hard to pull off in a visual.
Well, that's true for elves in general, too.
Anything with elves. Or anything in the Silmarillion, some of the way he writes, like the what's the place out west where the elves live?
Way out westward. No.
But the trees, and you have the Silmarils, and then you have that tree, then the ancestor of Shalab comes and sucks it dry. That scene is astounding in the Silmarillion.
I wonder if that's partly because the Silmarillion is such a history in a sense that the scenes that do have very striking visual imagery are very memorable.
I do think it's that. I think Tolkien knew how to use language, being a linguist.
That is very true.
Especially in the very mythic stuff resounds with me. Mythic stuff always seems more beautiful for some reason. Yeah. That's just something that's personal.
Right. But let's see. Someone else who's very good at visual beauty, obviously Miyazaki.
Miyazaki's a genius.
You just those are movies that you just want to look into the background and then find all the nooks and crannies.
And then you look at a Miyazaki, and then they throw Joe Hishiyashi's music on top of it.
Oh yeah.
And it just
yes.
Because that guy's good at making beautiful music.
Yes.
Music that just instantly sticks. he's kind of the Eastern John Williams in many ways.
I guess you could sort of, if you want to include audio, you could sort of expand visual beauty into like sensory beauty.
Sensory beauty, yeah.
I guess if you want to go a full length, you get into like senses that aren't really applicable for stories, like taste. It's a beautiful, it's a scrumptious meal.
Apparently the best visual representation of that ever was Ratatouille. I eat this and suddenly... And I have no palate at all for that sort of stuff.
And probably the literary equivalent would be the Redwall series, where they're constantly eating. And it's like after battle, yay, a feast. We're on a journey, yay, a great meal. And you definitely get a feel. I guess Brian Jacques loved writing about food.
Hey.
But okay, so
simple beauties.
Yes, so that's the sensory. Obviously, a beautiful person, a beautiful woman. All that kind of stuff fits into that category too. And then we'll go.
Oh, okay, I'll have to throw in. We mentioned Babylon 5 already. Okay. A beautiful scene in Babylon 5 is Londo looking out the window as Narn is getting bombed. No, I'm serious. Like, for me, this is one of I love this. Like, I love that picture. That picture is astounding. I think it's beautiful because it captures so many different conflicting emotions of Londo simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And it just hits you in the feels, as they say.
As they say.
That's
true, which is something I almost overlooked, particularly in the visual medium. It's very closely related to craft, but cinematography. There is a whole aspect too. Just like a painting, people will study a painting to kind of see how things are presented and the framing and the lighting, all that stuff. Every scene of a film is the same way. One of my lighting books at film school was called Every Frame of Rembrandt. Again, pointing out Rembrandt was very much light was a prominent feature of his paintings, and obviously light is a very important part of filmmaking. You have to have good exposure to get a good looking image, and especially old school filmmaking. There's some cameras coming out nowadays that will like give you ridiculous amounts of good imagery in like really low lighting situations. I've seen the A7S. Go look that up, and like low light stuff you can do with A7S. It's ridiculous.
Crazy.
But anyway, that's just a side tangent. But yeah, cinematography, that's a very important part of the visual beauty.
Yeah, and it can really enhance the emotions and everything going on, and you know.
I was reading about some Wikipedia articles recently about Pixar movies, and they noted, like, say in WALL-E, the beginning of it has this very kind of, they went to with not lush, but it was very warm kind of environment, even though it's on a deserted Earth. It's very warm colors and stuff. Then when you first get onto the spaceship, the Axiom, it all becomes very cool, sterile kind of environment.
It's interesting. I have a whole book of basically it's Pixar will do outlines of the movies in color. I mean, just the color feeling of different scenes. And I have a whole book that kind of shows like the color progress in different movies.
Yeah.
And I recently saw some YouTube like 1 minute thing where they were showing how Pixar used different colors. It's called Roy G. Biv. It's interesting.
And I guess like they said in the beginning of the movie, they try to stay away from too much yellow or green. Yellow because they don't want WALL-E to blend too much in with the background, and then green.
The plant really.
Yeah, the plant really pops out then when you don't see much green before.
Beautiful use of contrast like that. Recently saw, what's it called? Gravity. Okay, because the whole thing's you're just chaotic and you're out in space and you get this real sense of just isolation. Then when she lands on Earth, it is like. Yeah. It is like suddenly your eyes are assaulted with color.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting choice to not do flashbacks or anything else, but just to, all you see basically is blackness and metal for an hour and a half. And then
she lands.
And then she lands, and it does more than, I mean, obviously, cerebrally or intellectually, I really noticed it, but it really drives home the meaning. I mean, it sunk in a little deeper because it was such a powerful switch.
Yeah, there's a lot to the cinematography often that backs up the story in ways you don't even always realize because you're focusing on the story. Well, I mean, some film people do, obviously, because they know to look for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're programmed into that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that aspect of it. Then another aspect of beauty, I think, in stories is the human beauty, and this can be either like, say, a character who's a beautiful character. I think Prince Zuko goes through a beautiful reformation or a redemption arc in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I had to bring up It's a Wonderful Life. George Bailey, just
the final scene of the
whole thing. Just the even though he gets all beat down, he is this character who can't not do these things. I mean, he spends his whole life sacrificing for people, and it's like he doesn't even understand the sort of person he is. Like, I have people in my family say they won't watch the movie, it's too sad, but to me, it's okay. It is sad part, but it's such a beautiful sad for most of it. Because it beats you down kind of, but it's like it's all the right way of being beat down. It's not because you did anything wrong at all. It's because you only did everything right.
I'm reminded of a certain Stephen Moffat quote: "Sad is happy for deep people." Sometimes, which is sometimes true.
Happiness is a sad song. That's a
Charlie Brown thing.
Yeah,
I can see that.
I agree with that. Yeah,
I can see that. Another character moment that I thought was very beautiful, and I don't really talk about this movie because I don't honestly remember a whole lot of it, aside from the end scene of Mr. Holland's Opus, which is kind of a celebration of this music teacher's life. And similar, again, to It's a Wonderful Life in that regard, kind of celebrating this one character. But anytime a character is, like, validated for years of service and all this kind of stuff, it always gets me right in the feels, as you said.
And then do a character one, but also one that just, I think, really, especially for me, works because of worldview and stuff. When I watched Passion of the Christ, I've only seen it once. I saw it in the theater way back whenever it came out. Need to see it again one of these days. But it always stuck with me and just really affected me where he's already been whipped and all that stuff that was very painful to watch. And then he's walking down the road with his cross and he stumbles and there's like I don't know, is Mary or who. And he's all bloody and everything. He says, "Look, I'm making all things new." And that sort of suffering servants get me. Okay. That's something. It's a Wonderful Life. Obed. It's something that, to me, that's one of the more beautiful sort of characteristics you can have. And in that case, to have all this agony, and then on top of that, that juxtaposition of, revelation of this suffering is working out the redemption of all things. That's that scene captured it very well for me.
Yeah, it resonates with you.
It resonates with me, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everyone has certain scenes in movies where, like, oh, remember when he did this? And so, sometimes it's just odd movies, like, remember when Iron Man did, But, it's something that...
It
resonates with some part of you that you find true or important or personal.
Because even within the Christian faith, there are a lot of different aspects that we're all made different.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all the different aspects. We have got certain traits and things that really resonate strongly with us, sometimes more strongly within one person than another person.
And that's the tricky thing about beauty. Just like we talk about gratuitous, it's hard to define exactly where that line is. Beauty is hard to pick out. This everyone will find beautiful. I mean, you might find everyone will find the craft good. Yeah. Anyone who knows anything about the craft, but it's hard to say everyone will be deeply affected by this moment.
Well, and that could be a tricky thing regarding craft too, because sometimes you have a movie or a book or something that someone who's a longtime student of the craft would be like, this is not very good. But maybe someone, and that's one of the great things about being a kid, for instance. You don't have all this like background experience of like what defines what is a good and a bad story, or elements or cliches. You don't know about any of that kind of stuff.
You come fresh at stuff.
Yeah. So like there's a potential for a lot of movies early on that later on you realize, okay, that wasn't so good, but that's why there was that part of you that resonated,
and that was the first time I ever saw that happen.
Yeah,
even if it happened in every movie since then, the first time. And that's that's an unfortunate thing for us sometimes as humans, that the second or third time a certain thing happens, we're like, oh, we've seen that before.
Yeah,
where sometimes it's still just as, sometimes it's just the writers are also just using it as a crutch, and that's something completely different. But
and I think that is true, again, why some people enjoy things that like critics or someone else might find really cheesy, because critics watch like every movie out there, but then some of your other people, they don't spend they may watch one movie a month, if that.
It's interesting just talking about things over and over again. Sometimes I wonder if beauty, it doesn't have some sense to do with how honestly like some scenes can be, maybe the writer's using the crutch, but you're observing it with this newness, this honesty, this like, I'm taking it at face value.
Right.
And I think I would guess that earnestness, I guess that's writing things earnestly maybe makes it easier to make it beautiful. Like you're not trying necessarily to be sometimes if you try to be impressive, you're not as impressive if you're just writing something that you deeply feel.
Or like as C.S. Lewis would say that one time, don't worry about being creative, because if you worry too much about just being creative or original, you won't find out becoming real original.
Yeah.
But if your focus is on the story, which we've said before, you'll turn out some good stuff.
Yeah, but I think we've rated this beauty and truth. So if you don't believe it's true, it's not going to come off beautiful.
Yeah.
But if this is like something you believe in, and you write it in that, and somehow convey that passion, that the way you admire or whatever, I think it's much more likely to come through. And then if you have a good craft, it helps too. But
yeah, very true. Okay, let's get back real quick to finish up. Also on the human side of things, we talked about a beautiful character.
Yes.
Relationships are also a very important part of that. Obviously, romance is a big part of it. I think there's always that one romantic movie that it's really touches you because it feels real, and and that can be that's another tricky thing. Some romances can feel fake.
Like what is that? It's the one where Christopher Reeves is like Mackinac Island, goes back in time, and you're
not talking about Superman.
No, it's the same actor.
Oh, okay.
But he goes back in time, he meets this girl.
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, what is that? Somewhere in Time or something like that. Anyways, people love it. It didn't work for me. That's all I'm saying. Because one of these, one of these cross time and deep barrier sort of love stories.
Kind of like The Lake House. I think that worked for some people and didn't work for others.
Yeah, probably like that.
Yeah. Tell you another relationship thing that I thought worked really well. Wall-E.
It worked amazingly well. Yes.
Yeah, I remember. That's one I distinctly. Yes, Up, obviously, the beginning of Up.
I don't know how you do that in 5 minutes, but you can.
But I just remember
Michael Giacchino.
I just remember in Wall-E sitting in the theater when they kind of reunite out in space and they do the dance around the spaceship, and just that's a beautiful moment.
And then directive. And then anyways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think those relations, when done really well, you just beauty, I think, not just, it affects you, but then you're like, life should be like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the point of beauty, is that that makes people want to make life like these things that you feel like aren't even, like you feel like they can exist, but you're not sure that they can survive, but you want them to anyways.
I guess you could say the ending to Lost is like that in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe the afterlife is anything like what they do in the end of it.
But the emotional resonance of that is very...
Yeah, you want to eventually be able to, meet with all these people and share in that fellowship.
Yeah, and have all the past...
In the past.
In the past, yes.
And I think
everything that happened.
And I think that ties into one last idea with beauty, and that's the lost beauty. Okay, I wasn't relating to that loss.
Good transition.
But the idea here I had was from like the elves leaving Middle Earth, or in Castle in the Sky.
Beauty.
It's a sad beauty. It's something that was once great and beautiful and grand that is now gone, and somehow that makes it even more beautiful. I think the human race has been dealing with this ever since Garden of Eden, honestly.
That sense of, that lostness, that brokenness, and the fact that you can see glimpses of it not being broken.
Yeah.
That there's examples, or there's echoes, or there's brief glimpses of, here's how things were supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful. It goes back to that, the defining it as beauty almost rises up this desire in you, like, if only, or like one day.
And that it's almost more beautiful because you can't have it, sort of thing. I mean, with Christianity, again, there's this hope that we will have it again someday, that someday all this trouble will end, and someday we will experience that beauty again. So if you can tap into that, that's an amazing thing.
And most stories are some version. I mean, conflict is I lost something I wanted, but we don't. Not all conflict focuses on that aspect of deep things that we have lost.
Yes.
Redemption. Sometimes stories are like that. Beautiful moment. Ben Linus.
Yeah.
No one else wants me. He's the only one that'll take me.
Yeah. Well, to wrap this up, I wanted to give you a chance to read a certain Dostoevsky quote you mentioned to me the other day.
Oh yeah, I found this. Well, I didn't find it. Actually, I was reading Dawn Crandall's book that she was on our podcast quite a while ago. But her book's out, and I thought, hey, I'll read that. But there was a quote at the beginning I just thought was very interesting. First off, because it's Dostoevsky writing it. I'm not sure who says this in The Brothers Karamazov, but it's from that book. Let's see. Beauty is not only a terrible thing, it is a mysterious thing. There, God and the devil strive for mastery, and the battleground is the heart of man. Which is pretty... and that's true, because the danger of beauty, and we've mentioned it very briefly, is that you can make things beautiful that shouldn't be, or weren't, or whatever.
Because...
or you can make truth look bad.
You can make truth look bad, and you can make a lie look beautiful. But in the end, beauty is a part of God's creation. He's created it. The devil can only try to mirror it or imitate it or distort it.
Even if they've distorted it, there's still some element of it that was beautiful.
True.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure we could go on, but...
Doesn't Screwtape say something along those lines?
Probably. Yeah. Screwtape says a lot of things that are very profound.
Okay. Well, anyway, we better move on to soundtrack. Okay, for my soundtrack today, I opened up OC Remix thinking I would do a Secret of Mana song because there's a lot of beautiful music from that game.
Yes.
But I didn't get much farther from the homepage, and I realized there was a new Final Fantasy X remix.
We don't do Final Fantasy very often, so we thought.
Yeah, well, I try to... Yeah, anyway, we actually do.
Well, Nobu Master makes great stuff.
He does. He's a master of melody. I think the only one who does it better or on equal ground is John Williams these days. The song he wrote for Final Fantasy X is a gorgeous one. Yes. So I couldn't resist. This is a remix of At Xanarkand, and the name of the song is Xanarkand String Quartet. So, as you can tell, beautiful, classical, emotive, wonderful stuff. We are back. Hope you enjoyed that string quartet.
Any version of Xanarkin is worth listening to, I think.
Yeah, that is true.
It's hard to mess that song up bad.
That's true. And I'm not sure if I said who did that. That was remixed by Gray Fox 1217.
Dun, dun, dun.
So there you go. All right. With that said, we're going to go into our next segment, which is a bit of story. Today, for a bit of story, we have a selection of Nicks.
Dun dun.
Dun dun, again.
We got the copyright cleared, so.
Yeah, that's always helpful. All right, so Nick, you want to set this story up for us?
All right, so it's one of my flash fictions. I think I have. Did you see my new story index on my website?
I did.
There's a lot of. There's like 67 of these flash fictions now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's very handy.
But anyways, this particular one I wrote on we were driving to North Carolina and I wrote it on, I think on an iPhone or iPad, I don't remember which is the only time I ever did that. But I had this idea, I think it was from Rennie somehow. I don't remember how, it was very interesting. But anyways, it's largely just, I won't spoil the story, it's only 1,000 words, but I'll attempt to read it in my best reading voice, which is merely adequate. Have you ever been to a Renaissance Festival in Michigan?
No.
There's this puppet guy, and he's like, merely adequate, and that's like his phrase. So his catchphrase.
Nice.
So okay, so I'll just start. It's called The Butterfly, and here it is. He listened to Charlotte's laugh from where he pretended to study, and watched her from behind his notebook. The sun shone in her hair and on her cheeks, and the sound of flowers was on her voice. You could pick it out distinctly from among the 6 of them jabbering away. Hers held a depth of rain and cool darkness, while the others were birds twittering endlessly. Daniel tried not to stare, but it was May, and it was deliciously warm, and the calculus upon his lap was heavy and pale, a mushroom upon the green fields of the park. Everywhere, almost men and almost women lounged and dashed, flung themselves foolishly into grass pulsing with color, skipped and sang and sauntered. Yesterday, hid in the mists of time, the future rippled out endlessly, moment by moment, savored like the wet crunch of golden apples upon the tongue. Today, Daniel decided, for perhaps the 7th or 8th time, he would finally find a way to get Charlotte alone. Always, she traveled with her gaggle, smiling and setting the world on fire with her brilliant gaze, her music subsumed into the alien feminine scherzo. He had exchanged words in the cafeteria and classroom, joined in mock fights in the dorm lobby, but he knew no more about her than a thorough scouring of her Twitter feed might, and did, reveal. In the new-made light of spring, he ached to know her more clearly. He stuffed his homework into his backpack, stood, and approached with unthinking confidence. Pan's wild flute strengthened him. "Hello," he said, finding it the easiest way to assault the din of discussion. "Charlotte, could I take you on a walk? It's a lovely day." Such directness confused the collective. They looked to Charlotte, asking wordlessly if she understood what was being demanded of her, and she looked to them, asking for permission to answer. "Sure," she said, her smile returning. "That sounds fun." She glanced back unconsciously as she left her almost twins, like Orpheus looking back to ensure Eurydice still followed. She and Daniel walked in silence for a time, settling into the path, into the possession of one another. "Did you see the new Pixar yet?" he asked. Of course she had. He'd seen her there with her tribe. It was the first question, the necessary question, because to inquire of movies among students was to inquire of weather among farmers. And she began to speak. With joy and passion she spoke. And he listened, ears tilted, his soul aghast with wonder at the aria of her speech. When she seemed to come to the end of a thought, and the final strains of music began to trail into a holy silence, he would add a few words, prompt a question, and she, after a moment's hesitation, like a skipped heartbeat, would let forth a melody in response. He listened, and picked out a second theme beneath the first, and like a conductor, he drew it out, and her rich, deep voice flowed over mother, and father, and brother, touching softly, with great care, upon a phone call or childhood memory. And they walked among the shadows and the blinding sun, in grass overfull of chlorophyll, surrounded by young demigods convinced of their immortality. Daniel passed soundlessly. Charlotte colored the sky, and painted the clouds, and shaded the trees with quick, tentative strokes. She glanced at him, and flashed her teeth in unaccustomed delight. "Why do you look at me like that?" she asked. "Like what?" he answered, reddening. She laughed and turned away. In that burst of triumph and joy he spoke. From the longing in his heart he spoke brash, impossible words. "Who are you, Charlotte Nussbaum?" They had nearly gone full circle, and the sun continued on its dying path, blazing as it fell to earth. At the picnic table, like a flock of pigeons, the others waited, squawking. Daniel touched Charlotte ever so lightly, like wind that kisses flowers, and she stopped. He looked at her, letting the question flutter around them, skittish, a butterfly deciding whether to land or to flit away to other gardens. Her face was sun upon rough water, blinding and beautiful and confused. She glanced at her cohorts, her band of sisters, for they sensed her, and she sensed them. Daniel could feel the gravity pulling her. "Should we?" he ventured. She shook her head, distracted. The walk was over. The song was ending. With the echoing sounds of footsteps, the lead was exiting, stage left. The question landed, ever so gently, ready to fly. He heard its tiny feet upon the red of her lips. Daniel, I don't know." She turned away, and the little butterfly disappeared, and with shouts of joy, the harpies welcomed Charlotte back as she joined her voice to theirs, and was swallowed up in the too bright light of the setting sun. With that particular story, I did purposely try to make it capture that sense of spring and that spring fever you have as a college kid when you're like, must go talk to a girl.
But you also did it in a very, you could have written this in a much more casual style.
Yes.
But this is what I meant by good flowery language, in a sense.
This was me, I believe, imitating Ray Bradbury at this time. Which I find myself tending more to this sort of language in certain, especially in short stories. Longer stories, it's hard. You can't keep that up very easily without a deep emotional sense you're trying to capture, which for me is very difficult in a novel. But in a short story, when you have one idea that you're trying to grab hold of and deliver, I found that I really like this sort of style when it works.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. I can see, because modern day novels tend to be modern, at least modern sounding. So, and this is, while it is obviously modern setting, a whole book of it might be distracting.
Yeah, exactly. That was The Butterfly.
So nice job, you made it.
I did it. That worked pretty well. I like it, and I like alliteration. Like I'm not a very good poet. Like I don't write poems very well. Like I don't have ideas for poems, but I always like the idea of playing with words in the way poets do. I'm almost too mathematical with poems. I like my IMs. My blank verse. Free verse is much rougher for me.
You haven't done haiku much, though.
No, I haven't done haiku much.
Which that's a pretty
pretty structured thing. Yeah. Anyways, yes.
Sometime maybe. All right, so that is our beautiful little story of a butterfly. And now we'll wrap things up with Project Update. All right.
Tim, you have some big news.
I do have some news, yes. New Wells Rising is now available as an ebook.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yay! So you can go over to childrenofthewells.com right now and go download that. You can pay as much as you like for it, or nothing if you so wish. Not that we're saying that's the better choice, but, that is an option.
It is an option.
No, seriously, we're really happy to have it out there. If you've not read any Children of the Wells stories, there is a previously on section written by Nick's wife, Natasha.
Yes, who's very good at doing that sort of thing, putting things together. And it's a nice place to come in if you haven't, because it's almost launching kind of phase 2 of Children of Wells. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're right on the cusp of entering kind of a new time of Children of the Wells, and it's fitting too, because we've I don't remember if we talked about this on here before, but we have put together a compilation of a print compilation of Bron and Clea. The first 3 Bron and Clea novellas have been put in one print book.
It's a nice looking book.
Yeah, it is a nice looking book.
About 300 pages. A good sized novel. No?
And now with my story finished, that completes the first Jason trilogy, if you will. So that will probably be coming out in next month.
The hope is by no later than early November, because we want it for the Allen County Public Library book signing thing.
Author thing.
Yep.
Cool. Which I just went to the tail end of that last year, but actually I was really interested in that one. There's a panel at the end about self-fiction or self-publishing.
Oh, okay.
Which I just thought it would be interesting
to go
for
and
me.
see what. Yeah.
Yeah, because you know way more about it than I do, but I'd be really curious to find out.
I'm sure there's a lot more now than there was. I mean, it keeps changing, and
yeah. So I thought that would be interesting.
So if you're in Fort Wayne, you can come to Allen County Public Library. I believe it's November 9th.
Yeah, sounds right. Yeah,
So,
I think that's right.
Yeah.
So is there anything new with your ongoing projects, Nick?
I'm in the second. I'm doing this ghostwriting thing again, where I basically polish up chapters for this landlording book. Just hints and tips about being a landlord, and I basically make it sound nice. And then right now I'm going through and editing my changes because I make mistakes when I change stuff.
Sure.
I'm making sure it sounds good after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be done pretty soon. Writing a quick short story just because I wanted a break, and then I gotta write my play for the youth for Christmas, which will be it's always an interesting thing. I got about 3 pages done of it, but
cool. Yeah, for writing not being your full-time job, you do get a lot of different things you have to write for.
I was thinking the other day. I probably would do fine if I wrote full-time, but it's I don't know. I like having a job that's just I work with my family. I get paid. I do other sort of stuff. That feels like I'm interacting with people and helping stuff, and then I get to come home and I can write my own stuff. So it worked well for me at this time of life.
Oh, cool. So that's always good.
And then the hope then is to get back on Strid and Fred, because I knew I was going to have to take a break to do this ghostwriting thing, and I figured I'll just do that and the play real quick and then get back to Strid and Fred, unless there's a Children Wells thing that needs to be done. But
now the question is, can you get back to Strid and Fred before November? Because I know you had talked about doing some NaNoWriMo stuff.
Well, and the thing is, as it sits now, I kept thinking about doing some, but honestly, I'll probably, if I get this short story done, which is what I want to do, I'll probably go back. I've done enough other stuff. I'll probably go back to Strid and Fred unless there's some other thing that has to get done.
Sure.
Yeah. But I figure I'm starting to miss it now, and I'm ready to do the 3rd section.
Well, that's a good sign that you're missing it, because for a long time you were just ignoring it.
Yeah. Well, I got deep enough into the Fred. It still will be it'll be rough because I have to reposition myself yet again into the whole 3rd section. But I think now it's having done 2 full thirds and some of the third done. I feel like, oh wait, I can actually get this finished. Okay. Before, you're almost so far, you're like, it's going to take forever. Short stories are almost more comforting when you have limited time. You're like, I did something, look. As opposed like, I'm writing 200,000 words. Well, it won't be that long, but it might be 150, which is pretty long for me.
Sure.
110 usually is my cap, so.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, so that's most of what's going on around here. Apple Festival.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that might be done by the time this comes out.
But. Yeah, it depends. We'll see. But yeah, one thing I don't think I've mentioned here on the podcast yet is I have left my regular job, or what had been my job for a while at Archery Tag, and I'm still working for the church, but I'm trying to start up a freelance videography stuff. So I've got a few things need to kind of start building it up a little more this month. So if you have a video project you need me for, you can hire me if you like.
Good work.
But yeah, and thankfully, the church has been kind of my backup part-time. I've been doing a lot of stuff with that recently.
Yeah, that's nice.
So
for transitional purposes.
I think so. And we'll see. My goal is to get some things in motion through the end of this year, so that beginning next year I can kind of pursue the web video series, or the web series thing I've talked about before.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes.
And then we have some Derailed Trains news.
Yes, there's some Derailed Trains news. We released on September 24th was our 4-year anniversary.
Which is like right around like the anniversary of Lost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Within a couple days.
Yeah, very strangely enough. I don't think we had.
I don't think we ever knew that. Yeah.
Well, September 24th is also Jim Henson's birthday.
Well, so it's like a perfect combination.
Yeah, but obviously the world wanted us to
do a podcast.
Yeah. So it fits. But and to celebrate that, we put out our first episode on YouTube. We'd been talking about doing that for a while.
So you can share it to people.
Yeah, so you can share it, and it's a little easier in some ways to link than it is to a podcast. Well, you can.
And a lot of people listen and watch YouTube all the time.
Yeah,
like I'm not one of those people, but a lot of people do.
A lot of people do. Yeah, it's easy for them. They don't have to download a file to do it. They just hit play. So that's there on YouTube if you want to look us up. And my goal actually we're gonna do our main celebration for our anniversary during our 50th episode, which is
2 episodes.
Yes, coming up fast, ridiculously fast. But to kind of continue that celebration, we're going to continue to do Derailed Trains reruns on YouTube. Well, my aim is to have a new episode up every day from October till the 50th, well, till November sometime, probably until right before Thanksgiving.
Nice.
So yeah, that will be an exciting way. If you want to, been meaning to go back and re-listen to some episode, maybe there's some topic that's you really wanted to hear about again, that might be an exciting way to do it. Just go through a day at a time. More derailed trains in your life is not a bad thing.
No, never.
Absolutely.
Apparently.
Probably.
Most likely.
All right. With that, now that we've downplayed ourselves, we should mention our own website.
Yes, derailedtrainsofthought.blogspot.com is our main site with all the episodes.
All the episodes.
All the episodes belong to you.
Well, no, they're not, but they're available for you to listen to at Derailed Trains of Thought.
And then you can email us at derailedtrains@gmail.com, which is checked once a year.
A little bit. I think I check it a little bit more.
I know.
That. But that is available. We're also on iTunes. You can download all our episodes there. And we do need to work. Zach was telling me a little bit more about that.
The Stitcher?
Stitcher, yes. And it's like, oh, okay, that seems doable. It wasn't quite as involved as I was afraid it would be.
I know nothing about it except the name. And then we're on Mixler if you want to hear us live, which is always entertaining.
Yes.
That would be mixler.com/Derailed Trains of Thought.
Yes,
the whole thing?
the full thing.
Full thing.
With that said, Nick, do you want to introduce your soundtrack before we get caught here at Uwaba's
you want the long or short introduction? Okay, here's my medium introduction, which is the other songs I wanted were too long.
Yes.
No, I did have to throw out there. If you want really good, beautiful stuff, go listen to Beethoven's Ninth. It's a little long for the podcast. The double fugue at the end of near the end of Movement 4 is just astounding, and just gets me all the time. Not all the time, but every time I listen to it, and I'm like, I got it again.
I'm just impressed that you're able to use words like fugue.
Well, I listened to a lecture on it too. See, Beethoven's Ninth has fascinated me for a long time. I've studied it some, and not as much as I would like, but anyways, let's see. And then also, Maze Dude has a song called Glowworm Jim, which if I had one remix that I could only have, it would be this one. It's aggressive ambient, apparently, according to him, because he makes up his own genres. It's 7 minutes long, a little long for the podcast, but I can listen to the song repeatedly. It always makes me in a good mood. I wrote a poem inspired by it.
But it is not the soundtrack where you...
No. I had to sell it because they can go out to mazedudemusic.com and go and find it under the American album. Okay. No, this is also a very good song. McVaff, who is the remixer, remixes a lot of great stuff. I mean, his stuff is always quite entertaining and many times beautiful. And he remixed it from a game called Okami, which I've not played, but apparently is also very beautiful.
From what I've heard. I need to play it.
The song is called Celestial Winds from the East.
Has that very calming Oriental.
It has that sort of beauty. That Eastern elegance, a minimal elegance of a lot of the Japanese Eastern art, and I really like it. Yeah.
And a very appropriate song for our location today.
Yes.
Which, speaking of,
is that Stink Spirit coming back?
I hope not.
Okay,
I'm beginning to smell something.
Bicycle grease all over me for ages.
Okay. Well,
okay.
let's.
I hear a lot of yelling. Maybe that other creature started getting into stuff.
I think our usual tactic of hiding is in order.
Yeah, hiding.
Okay, so let's do that.
Okay.
Until next time, this is Tim.
This has been Nick.
And we'll see you next time.
Adios.